It's time to replace the TV mount. This is broken. This is about 9-10 years old. It's AVA, and I'm replacing it with this one, also an AVA. There are quite a few design changes they've made over the years. From the very beginning, this particular one was always just a little bit loose. You can see how the hinging mechanism works. 2 here, 1 here, and 1 at the back. But here, you can't tell, but this is plastic, like plastic bushings. And there are plastic bushings here. And this one has just shattered right off, leaving this mount to be very unreliable. Now we have a 65-inch TV on this thing, so you can imagine a 65-inch TV that can now flop in all kinds of different directions. And when I was moving this one night and I heard this crack, it gave me, well, a heart attack would be a good, it felt like I had a heart attack. I thought the TV was falling off the mount. I don't think that could ever happen. It's metal to metal, metal to metal, but still the bushings are a joke. Well, fast forward to 2020 and the plastic bushings are all gone. And the mount itself is more narrow, but it's wider, a little heavy. And I think it's a much more elegant and sleek design. Whatever parts on this are plastic are for either cable management or hiding things. So any structural components are now seemingly all metal. I'm much happier about that. In this case, it's already pre-mounted, but I don't like where a couple of these bolts are on the wall. They're just a little off the stud, just a little bit too far over. So I'm going to move a couple of these mounting bolts over. So I'm going to need all the tools I would need to do a fresh install. This is the old mounting hardware, which is a glorified Phillips bit. Getting it out will probably strip some more too. That'll be interesting. Old hardware, junk, new hardware, so much better. So much better. Because you can get a socket set on that, crescent wrench. If you had to use a crescent wrench, try and use a socket set. 13 millimeters in this case. I'm going to need a very reliable, in this case it's Franklin sensors. These things are amazing, I love these. It gives you a full readout along a lead line spectrum of where the stud might be. If you have a stud finder that only gives you one light or an arrow, and you have to find the stud, it takes a little time, but it works. This, however, gives me a much more, I can tell if it's a real stud that goes all the way up or if it's just a fake reading or something else. It's just a much better reading. This is not the actual part that mounts to the TV. This is the old mounting hardware. Steel, heavy, clumsy. You pop it on the top, it would latch down, you could bolt it in, so it's fine. So it did the job, but quite heavy. Certainly not what you would call elegant. This is the new mounting hardware for the new mount. Aluminum. You get 4 of these that are all adjustable, so you can move them in and out and angle them depending on where you need. It too will go down, and then it will bolt, clamp to the back, so it won't move. Much better design overall, easier to install. Get some painter's tape, the plastic bag, fold the back over just a little bit so that it's a nice clean edge. Put that under your hole, collect all the dust. Drywall dust, some of it will go in the air, but most of it wants to fall straight down. To know if you have the right drill bit, you hold up your attachment, in this case a leg bolt, and then you hold the bit in front of it And if you can still see the threads, you want to see a decent amount of thread on the bolt, you're in good shape. If you can't see much thread, then you're not going to have any grip, you're not going to have any traction. And if you see, say, half of the bolt itself instead of just thread, then you may have a hard time getting it in, and conceivably you could crack the 2x4 behind it. Generally speaking, the instructions will tell you what size to use, but if you're like me, none of my bits are in cases anymore because I have 20 different cases of these things just scattered around in one drawer. So that'll be perfect. Awesome. Put my drill on number 2 for speed. I've decided I do want to raise the TV up a little bit just so we have more room down here. I hate drilling in the wall. I know most of the electrical should be going along the bottom, but I still hate drilling into studs. You just never know what's behind there. Really, if you were nervous, you just turn off the breaker to your house. But so now I have my socket, this. I gotta start it with my hand, make sure this is right side up. This does seem to be right side up. Yep, definitely right side up. One of the tricks to getting these in well is to finger tight as much as possible, because by the time it's too tight for your fingers to turn it, that means that when you have the socket on, when you turn it backwards, it still puts a little bit of pressure on it, but if you finger tight as much as possible, then it's unlikely that it'll go backwards and thread back out. So if that makes sense, finger tight as much as possible so that when you want to put it in, you're not actually backing it out each time. It'll make sense when you're doing it. Make a star so that I absolutely can't screw up where I want the new hole to go. When you first start and you try to find where the studs are in your wall, I'll actually pull out a string of tape, 2 strips, and I'll go through and I'll find where the stud is and I'll draw, I'll find where the stud is and I'll draw, and I'll step back and I'll look at the wall. Once or twice I've had it happen that when I got, so let's say I find 2 down here, I'm excited, great, I can put the mount there if I want. And then I go up here just to confirm that there's a full length stud here. I won't find anything. There'll be nothing behind the wall, but there'll be something over here, which means whatever's down here is either a fake stud, a fake reading, or it's just sort of like a knee wall stud that they put in there for reasons that you can't explain. So if I didn't try to get a sense of what is really full here, using the tape, in a very careful measurement, this thing still probably wouldn't have fallen over. I mean, just with 2 bolts, it'll probably be just fine. Still, you got a $2,000 or $3,000 or $4,000 TV, whatever you have, you want to make sure that you're getting the right studs. figure out where exactly the base lines up. That's for cable management later. This is for your different size TVs, different lengths. And then you have these plastic washers. You want the screw to go into the very furthest part of your TV without going through the plastic or something. So you want to seat it in nicely. And you want it to stick onto here without any flex. So you're going to have to do trial and error. These are different sizes to make sure that it's going all the way in without, breaking anything, without also possibly falling out. You want it snug. So that's trial and error with those. Some smaller ones here if you need them. In this case, they want me to use just a standard, looks like panhead flush screw, but it's got that recessed square at the back. So when it goes through on this squared off, it tightens automatically. Washer, and then they want me to use 2 nuts. So instead of giving me a lock nut of some kind, they've just given me 2 nuts for each bolt to go through.
Don't.